Welcome to the Simply Be Found Huddle with Dean and Rob, with co-founders of Simply Be Found. Both Dean and myself are both serial entrepreneurs and have done multiple things inside of business, not just Simply Be Found. I think that's what makes us very unique. Dean, welcome this morning. Thank you for joining me again. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Rob. I'm ready to jump into this and let's have some conversation and see what we can come up with today.
So what an interesting thing is, when we started the huddle, we weren't really sure how to do it, how often to post, and kind of where this thing was going to go. And a lot of people have just enjoyed our randomness and how we kind of bounce around and bring up topics that a lot of businesses, have questions on. I had a question that came across this morning from a member wanting to know about how we advise on how to manage time, our whole entire philosophy on meetings, and how we handle and use AI to be able to kind of improve that, because she feels like she is doing a lot of meetings with staff and that it's repeating the same stuff over and over, and it's keeping her from getting her work done. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel that way. What do you think?
I agree with you. Meetings can become your to-do list for the day sometimes if you always have them. And the reason, meetings are not bad, face to face or video, whatever it ends up being, depending on the kind of business or how you're distributed. But just a meeting to just talk about things over and over again is always a waste of time. And how do you communicate your information? So let's talk about the meeting thing, because a meeting just because is not good time management.
I've always hated, and why I've never made it really in the corporate world, is I don't like to have a meeting about a meeting about a meeting. And, oh, well, Johnny wasn't here, so now we have to have the meeting again. That type of stuff has always drove me absolutely crazy. Now, when you talk about meetings, it changes between industries as well. Some need to have meetings, and it's required to have a daily stand-up, but a lot of that can be solved with video as well, with services like Loom and different video recording, to where you can basically record out where you are in a project, what you're doing, and have more value from that than you could from having the actual meeting in some aspects. But then there's other times, like you and I having this conversation right now, has more value because it's a conversation that goes back and forth.
Right. And it's kind of like if you're what am I trying to brainstorming? I mean, it's really hard to not have a meeting and brainstorm a little bit, because you have to have the point, counterpoint, that kind of thing, depending on what you're doing. But you don't want to end up being a social hour either. Because I've seen that happen. In the corporate world, I used to run a daily stand up because we were a big project kind of thing, and pretty soon, as people got comfortable, it became social hour. And instead of
drinking their coffee, bringing their Diet Coke.
Yeah, I mean, instead of being a 20-minute meeting, which is all you need to do, report status, it ended up being an hour because people were doing that. You know what I did for that to solve that problem? This is kind of one of those my fun ones.
All right, what'd you do?
I took all the damn chairs out of the conference room, so everybody had to come and stand up. So they didn't want to stand for an hour, so the meeting only lasted 20 minutes. And that's the problem is, we had to have that daily meeting just because of what we were doing. It was an engineering project, and you had to have a status thing, and it was before some of the communication things we have today. But that's what you have to do. You have to make sure that the meetings are relevant, and they're you can come up with some great ideas sometimes in meetings, but you don't want to have that every day kind of thing.
No, and you want to have a value from it. It all depends on your industry of what you're doing. And you can also utilize a lot of different AI stuff. There's the pendants that are out there that'll automatically record everything you're saying and then be able to take notes. And then you can put that into AI and then convert that over to being, different pieces. But I think meetings have changed with AI in a lot of aspects for what they can provide, and just with technology, like things like Loom, and being able to do those videos back and forth, because sometimes that's all you need to do. And you could cut your meetings of your daily stand-ups down to where you're not doing a big stand-up except for once per week. And then everybody takes the time, but everybody knows where everybody is because they've done a video on it every single day for where they stand and where they're kind of at the project and where their bottlenecks are. And that also allows branch off meetings, because you might have a team that's working on this project and the rest of the team doesn't care about it. And having that whole piece. Now, I like Elon Musk's philosophy on meetings. Have you ever heard his philosophy on meetings?
I'm not familiar with his philosophy per se.
If you're not finding any value in the meeting and you feel like you're just standing there and you have nothing to contribute to the meeting, leave.
There you go.
Just get up and leave.
You know, and you know, there's a lot of truth to that. But the flip side of it, when you're the low person on the totem, I don't want to use that term because I don't want to do that. If you're the low person in that room, and you get up and leave, you may have some repercussions. So you
could.
sure, you need to make sure of where your status quo is at before you do that. But I agree with that. But on the flip side of it, Rob, you talked about the AI and some of the things that go on. We got to be, we as business owners and our staff, we got to be real careful. You want to use AI to the point, but you still have to have some personal interaction.
You have to bring some personal interactions into it.
Yeah, because we've talked about AIs and how people get comfortable with the AIs because they talk to them the way they want to be talked back to. That's a whole other subject. But make sure
it fits into it.
Some people interaction. That you agree, you disagree. Some things like that, because that's how you can problem solve too.
It fits into the entire mindset of how people think. People want to feel value. They want to be able to be part of something. That's usually what the meeting is about, and building morale. So if you're just using AI all the time, you're never going to be able to build that morale piece up. I mean, if you're going to use AI all the time, you might as well buy one of those robots from either Google or all these different companies are coming out and just have them run the meeting. But I mean, it all depends on what industry you are in to be able to kind of figure out if that meeting is needed. So I think it's a matter of, technology has changed the way businesses run, but people still think the same way. We still have, the crocodilian brain that I like to go off, and I stole that from Oren Klaff. But having that crocodilian brain of, am I going to mate with it? Am I going to eat it? Am I going to fight it? What am I going to do with this? Is it going to kill me if I eat this berry? I mean, that whole entire mechanism of our brain still exists. And in today's world, we have a lot of outside influence. And I think that's one of the problems that's wrong with the world today, is we have so much going on and we're so connected that our brains were never made to be able to consume this many advertising pieces, this much inside of, problems to be able to solve. We're constantly going and we never shut down. And you tell me that all the time. You work too much. My wife tells me that. You never take any of those breaks. And I mean, you feel it over time when you're sitting and going through. And AI is supposed to take a little bit of that off and be able to make it to where it's more manageable. But you have to utilize it in the right ways to where you don't over-manage it. Because I think a lot of people end up going too far to the left or the right, and then they end up making it to where it's too much of one thing and not enough of a combination, and not properly utilizing tools that they have in place. That was a long-winded answer.
Yeah, that's okay though. But we're talking about time management as well. The AI is taking a lot off my plate. I mean, my research time has gone way down, but now I'm discovering my with the island of knowledge. The bigger your island gets, the bigger the shore of the unknown gets, and that I think that you got to be careful not to get into that, because you can go off on tangents on things like that. It just takes way more time that way, and then you sometimes you may pollute yourself a little bit, if you will, with too much information. I'm not trying to say that
you can't, but it's easier to overthink something, right, and overanalyze it. Because now that everybody has access to AI, and I would say one of the biggest downfalls of AI is everybody thinks they could be an expert in anything.
Right. And you know what? I use AI to help me to do research.
Yeah.
It gives me a lot of things and go, I now I know a little bit about a lot of things. And that gets really hard to pull that all back in and make sure that you're using it the way that's best for you. So hence it circles right back to the meeting piece, is now you get together with a group of other human beings and you can talk about some questions, concerns, and other people will at least give you their input on that. So just to have a meeting for meeting's sake is bad, but if you need to clarify some things, sometimes that's not all. We're back. So it's that fine line between.
There's a major fine line. But you and I did something really interesting over the last 5 years. You and I used to take 30-minute phone calls, right, to be able to do a sales presentation for the same amount of money that we're actually less money when we were first starting off. We were a lower price. So we were doing that to be able to get sales and to do that side. That became very hectic and a lot of weight on both of our shoulders.
Right.
We spent a lot of time. We ended up coaching, doing stuff, and expanding out. Yes, it was good to hear all those stories and all those pieces, but we converted that to where now we handle everything 100% by email and chat.
Right.
And we've saved a lot of our time to where we could do stuff like this. We invite people to come in and be on our podcast. We do all of that side, but it's one of those things to where you have to be able to make sure you're putting yourself out there to where you're thinking about that. Is it worth the time doing that? And what you and I really learned during that process is if someone is willing to be able to have a chat with you or to be able to send an email back and forth with questions and do that sales process, they were a good fit for our program because chances are they were going to be able to use the program. But if they can't chat, they can't email, our program probably wouldn't work for them. Would you agree to that?
I would
I've
agree.
never looked at it
When
that
we
way.
first started out, we were trying to understand the banes and the issues with small businesses, and so it helped us to grow. But then through that process of learning this stuff, the problems didn't change that much, and we found that we can solve the same concerns with a chat or an email. And I think that there's some value to the phone call, but I don't think it. I mean, you got to be really careful not to waste your time on. Again, it's a time management piece. Is the phone calls may be necessary for some industries, but
Correct.
for our industry, I mean, if you're looking, so it gets to be back into the what's your profit margin? If you need if you're a $10,000 profit margin and it takes an hour to talk to somebody, that's one thing. But if you're only making $10 an hour on that and you spend an hour talking to somebody, I mean, I'm not saying don't do the phone calls and don't do those things, but you got to make sure that you manage your time in a way that's profitable for your business and you get the most out of it for your business.
Correct. I mean, people experience this all the time. I mean, if I was to consult somebody on this to be able to say this is a big section that's just draining you. It's draining you emotionally, financially, whatever it's draining you on inside of your time. And if sales is one of those things, can your sales be done by a video? And can you lead someone through? Can you bring them into an email or funnel system and walk them through each step of the system by a video going, okay, I'm going to explain what this part is. Okay, I'm going to explain this part. Okay, this is how these businesses do it. Now, if you have any further questions, chat with us. Or that's when we hop onto the phone call. I mean, it's one of those things to where you can break that down. Now, there's industries that this will not work in. Like if you're a roofer and you're doing hail damage, you got to still put eyes on the actual roof and decide if it has the damage and be able to give a quote. But we've talked about that for contractors before. They can have a conversation with someone on the phone versus going out to them and then charge for the appointment to go out and give the actual bid and design files and that value of what that consultation is. But they can give a round number of most contractors for most projects by the phone and be like, it's going to be somewhere between this, just as a rough estimate.
Right.
But that'll save time for them having to drive out to that location to do that project. It's the same thing. You want to be able to streamline that process. For one, customers don't want to spend a ton of time going through and having to figure out you. A lot of people don't want to sit through the sales pitch. So how many businesses are out there that are still doing sales pitches and they really don't need to?
Or some salespeople still use the old tactics of get 3 yeses and they're going to say yes, or they're going to try to pressure you into a type thing. But I'm going to start. You made that a really long answer, and I wanted to jump in.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. But the thing is, you talked about doing a video. I mean, versus a phone call, because you can use that. You can use that for instead of doing a meeting, you can use those videos for training pieces as well. I mean, you say, if this is a task and you do it over and over again, you don't have to have a meeting with everybody to say this is this task. You can do a video. You can use that, you create SOPs, standard operating procedures. I'm using acronyms that make me crazy, but you can use that. You can use that for those kinds of things. You can also use it saying, let's go back to the roofer saying, oh, you just had a hailstorm. Go look at your downspout. And if you have asphalt roofs and you see this kind of particulate matter on the bottom of your, then you need to call me because you got damage and we need to look at it a little closer. Those are kinds of things, but that gets into, into some other things too, is for content for your business as well. But, but the video process and not having a meeting is still one of those things that we need, that is a way of getting information out without having to have the personal contact. But it's that, that whole fine line again.
Well, it's kind of like the whole entire scheduling piece. There's things like Calendly. There's booking programs out there that can schedule you out. So if you have something where it's there, you don't have to have a phone conversation to be able to get someone scheduled. You can collect the right information, have it follow up, have it do the text messages, have it do all that automation piece to where it streamlines you. And like we've said during this, every industry has a different way to be able to streamline their time management. And a lot of that comes down to their sales process, how they're handling their marketing, how they're managing their entire day. And we've talked about it in this channel using kind of the Dan Martell kind of method that he breaks down in buying back time. And that we had somebody on the huddle recently that was talking about this too, about just writing down your time that you have. What you spent every 15 minutes, what did I do? What did I do? What did I do inside of there? Because that'll help you be able to decide, am I working on what makes my business the most money? Because I think a lot of business owners get, you and I've joked that, we're lead janitors and we clean up shit all day inside of our businesses and inside of Simply Be Found even. And you got to decide, are these tasks that make me more money, or are they someone it's cheaper for me to put somebody into that task or a tool or an AI or whatever it might be inside of that task to do it so it's done. Might take a little bit of my time, but not as much time as I'm spending right now. And I can spend that time doing things that are making my business money, because at the end of the day, if my business doesn't make money, nobody gets paid and my bills don't, it closes down. It goes belly up, kaput.
Right. And then that ties back into the business owners who defines, or the business manager, whatever you are, you define the personality of your business. And you need to make sure that there's enough time in the day for you to do that. And don't get hung up in all the daily tasks on that with your staff and everything. I know you have to provide guidance and direction, but you still have to define by setting aside time as well. When you talk about Calendly or something, that was easy for me to say, but something like that where you need to put in blocks of time for yourself throughout the day to do the business side of it. I mean, as well. I know that comes a long ways away from the meeting thing, but it's still
But does it?
Piece.
Still time management,
right?
And managing your time is a very hard thing as an entrepreneur, because for one, I mean, you're only given so much time. You can make as much money as you want to make. I mean, look, there's people out there coaching to make $1 million in 10 minutes. That's all bullshit. But it's one of those things to where you have you have only so much time, and how you utilize that time is everything. I struggle at times. I've stacked certain tools up. I've gotten better over my years. I like to revert back because sometimes we are our own worst enemy. I am for sure, to where I let myself get into inside the cycles, and it's not good. And it doesn't just affect me as the co-founder of one of the company. It affects everybody I manage below. It affects our sales. It affects absolutely everything. And some of that is part of that whole entire thing. And we've talked about this before, is entrepreneurs are notorious when things start to go really well, they self-sabotage and end up taking themselves back because they're entering into something that is very unknown, and it's scary, and they feel out of control for that. And I think most entrepreneurs feel that way.
I would agree with you on that. And the big thing is as an entrepreneur or a business owner or manager, is that you can get hung up on the reactivity or the reaction to issues or problems that may pop up during the day. And you have to make sure your staff can handle things, that you respond in a way that works in your schedule as well. Because you and I handle like the chat, let's go back to that one right there. There's times when that can take up my entire afternoon. And there's times when I we say we'll respond, and we don't have to be reactive. Reacting at a time based on the need that's appropriate for the action that you need to be taking. That gets because if it's just like,
I agree.
Question, this is one thing, but if I have a problem that you need to solve, then you need to solve that problem. So your reactivity time and your management has to be based a little bit on what's important. I know that I like to be Johnny on the spot, if you will, and I want to respond right away, but I'm in the middle of something else. You need to make sure that if you're going to stop what you're doing, it's appropriate for the time requirements that are going to be involved, or the loss of time on your part as a business manager.
I think there's a big part to that. And I think there is a huge aspect where you can put workflows together, like how we use Intercom. I spent this last weekend going through and doing a lot of stuff inside of Intercom for adding some workflows and conversations to where it kind of walks through some of those basic questions that we get asked all the time. And it brings some insight, still gets them to you and I. It's still not done by AI. You're just going to get a couple different answers and some links to be able to direct you in the right spot. But there's workflow pieces that can improve your process. And I think every business has aspects inside of it that they're trying to be able to improve their process and walk all the way through. And I think that's extremely important.
I agree with you 100% on that. I try to think of what other things in my head that are really important in the time management piece. I mean,
it's a matter of making yourself a schedule and sticking to it, but nothing is going to work if you're not willing to follow what you put in place. So if you put a process in place and you don't follow it, you're going to get yourself into trouble because you're going to get off track. Next thing you know, you forgot to, pay, sales tax or whatever the hell it might be. I mean, we've all been there. So you got to make sure you stay to whatever plan you do. It's kind of like if you have a CRM, which is a customer relationship management software. If you're not entering data in for that, you're never going to get anywhere because you're not collecting that data. So you're not going to be able to do your email blast. You're not going to be able to do all those pieces for your marketing if you're not going through and doing those systems. So if you put a system in place, make sure you're actually going to use it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the thing, and you can put so many systems in place that it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work for you either. So if you're better off to start off small and build it and build up good habits as well. And that gets to be another discussion in itself.
Well, I mean, the good habits piece is a huge aspect, Dean, because if you're, and it's easy to be able to break it because it's uncomfortable because now you're putting yourself into these shoes of having to do it. And I think a lot when it comes to time management, a lot of entrepreneurs also have the issue that they think they're the only ones that can do those tasks inside of their business. And they don't give it over. They don't let their staff fail. And that's how people learn and kind of go through and do stuff.
Right. And you got to let people discover and figure out how to solve their own problems as well. Because, I mean, you never grow if you're the only person that can, if you want to be the always hold everything together yourself and do it your way. But it also doesn't allow other people to think, and they may come up with a better solution than you.
Correct.
By doing that. And that is why you have to coach your own employees or staff or whatever to think for themselves. And they may see, you've been looking at it for so long. I've been in business for 35 years now, and I look at it a certain way. And I was told by my production manager to sit down and shut up because I needed to listen. And I took offense to it, but they had a better solution than what I was doing because of the way things have changed, because what worked 35 years ago doesn't work in today's market. And so that you got to allow that. It's all a progression. It's a learning process, and you have to let that happen in your business.
You do.
Or you're going to fail.
Yeah, and you have to listen to your staff and be able to do it. And I was going to go somewhere, and I just lost my train of thought in your middle of your thing.
I told you, your eyes sparked up. I told you, my production manager told me to sit down and shut up and listen to the other ideas.
What was it? I was going to say, shit. You and I talk about it all the time too. But it's a matter of having to let them fail. Oh, don't bring me a problem. You and I talk about this all the time, as it drives us crazy with our staff across all the different companies. They bring us a problem, or they have a problem and they talk about it amongst each other,
right? And
they don't ever bring it up, and because they're afraid to bring it up. And so it's two aspects: either you bring a problem up to us and you don't have a solution to it, or you have a problem and you're terrified to bring it up. And the biggest thing I want to say, because our staff listens to us, or at least they're supposed to, listen to our huddles, but it's one of those things to where bring up the problem, but
Right.
don't bring me a problem that you haven't thought of a solution for.
Right. And
or at least a start to a solution.
Right. I may not agree with the solution, but don't just say I don't like it. That never works. I mean, there's a lot of things in this world I don't like, but if I can't change it or improve it, don't tell me you don't like it.
Correct.
Think it through. I mean, that's what you have to encourage your staff to do. And by them doing that, it's going to take pressure off of you because they start to think for themselves, and the meetings go way down because they're thinking for themselves. They don't need to go, oh, I need you to approve this or look at this. I don't want to do that today.
No, I mean, that's task management inside of there. And I think that's where you have a team that can self-regulate itself is better as well, because they hold each other accountable for those pieces, because they take ownership in what they're doing. I mean, yes, you have your businesses that, you're just checklists and you have that. I don't personally, I hate managing that way.
Right. No,
I had to when I owned the restaurants and I had the restaurant side.
Yeah, well, it depends on the level of the people that are working for you too.
Right.
I mean, you have people that are just getting started in the world of business or whatever, and they don't really know yet. So that becomes more of a checklist process. If they've been there for a while, they should be able to free think for themselves. I mean, but you have to know your employees or your staff in order to direct them, to make them successful for you. That makes the business successful. I mean, success breeds success, if you will.
It does. And there's a lot of concepts that come into that same place. So there's a lot of pieces that are really huge inside of that aspect. And it depends on what industry you're on for what kind of employee you have. And it's knowing what your employees are or what your managers are inside of there. Your manager shouldn't be the best person of an employee that could follow tasks always, because they have to be able to think for themselves. They have to be able to think on their own 2 feet, or else you're going to spend all day, every day managing and worrying about, is this done? Is that done? Is this done? I like getting my reports in every day of, this is how many videos out we are. This is what we have. Here's the overview picture. Great, it's done. Boom. Clears my brain, allows me to go focus on what makes us money.
Right, and that's your EA positions. Now our science team, they're a whole different breed of character.
Oh, they're a whole different breed.
I mean, yeah.
But that's where we make money is going and being with the science team and going and cutting videos for us. I mean, that's where we actually are making good money and coming up with good solutions. Just like coaching, we're hearing about problems that are real problems. Right. But even for the coaching side, and it comes into the whole entire time management, if you see a problem with any of our tools, or you're seeing a problem in your business, we can't see that. You have to bring it up because we don't know it exists.
Right. And I think that's a big issue right there is I don't know what I don't know.
Correct. I think that fits right into time management, because I can't help you manage your time if I don't know.
Right. Exactly. So
that's a big key piece to it.
Yeah, and like you said, you can't expect people to just show up and work for a full 8 hours and make the whole day. They're gonna have to have some creative time, some thought time as well. So don't. Yeah, I've seen
overmanage. I see a lot of entrepreneurs overmanage.
Right. Well, they micromanage their people to the point of, well, you're doing this and doing that and doing this. Well, you can't grow if you micromanage. I mean, I shouldn't say that you can't grow. It limits your growth by micromanaging and the allowing your staff to grow.
Would you? I mean, that's a big question that we used to really look at when I did the whole venture capital side. So you'd look at a business, and can that business operate without the owner? Or can we hire a manager to replace the owner? Because do you own a job or do you own a business? Because if you own a business, you can walk away from it and it would keep running itself. It might not run exactly the way you would run it, but it'll run itself. So you should be able to oversee that so then it runs, and it's not a job. It doesn't require you to be there 40 hours in a week. I mean, you and I talk about that all the time, since you and I handle 100% of the chat and the support. If it ever got to a point to where it felt like a major job, you and I would end up training someone that would take over some of that.
Right.
I mean, doing these videos, if we didn't enjoy cutting these videos every day, we wouldn't be doing it.
No, that's exactly right. So, you started on something. I know this is a whole nother topic in itself. A lot of small businesses and entrepreneurs get started by creating themselves a job, but then they have to evolve if
Yep.
it's a job or a career, or is it whatever But a lot of them start out as, this is a job. I know something. I can do it well, but the problem is they have a hard time letting go of the job piece to grow with their
Well,
marriage.
that's a good topic, Dean, because that's one of those things to where most people either start a position because they were fired, they were laid off, they quit, and they have to be able to make money for their family, and they have
Right,
skills to be able to do it, and they decide they're going to become an entrepreneur. Then you have others that start as a hobby, and it gets into where, oh my gosh, I could do this full time.
right.
And then you have others that go out and they buy a business that's existing. And sometimes that works out well for them, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, there's a lot of concepts that come into that whole mix.
Exactly. That sounds to me like another topic we need to have a deep dive into, the philosophy of why we get into entrepreneurism
I mean,
or start a business.
another topic that we could do is a topic sometime on, why generational businesses fail, because that's a huge topic too,
Right, right,
especially
right,
with all the baby boomers right now. A lot of baby boomers are getting to the retirement age and they want to sell their businesses and they want to move on.
right. And they may not have family that wants to do it either. And so you get into that one. So then what happens to your legacy? I think we need to say that for another podcast, Rob. We can extend this for another half hour, but let's say that one for another topic.
I think we do. So all that stuff is going to tie into the time management piece. The time management is huge for how you manage your time. It's going to depend on where your industry is, where your business is, and what stage your business is in as well. So how you're managing that day is absolutely huge. But join us on the next podcast. You just heard us toss some ideas out, the 5 ideas that we might do. See if we actually follow through and actually record those. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you have a great idea, let us know, because we love to take on things
Right.
that we don't know anything about either. And
Or
we're
if you're an expert inside of those areas, we'd love to have you on just to go through and break it down.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That'd be just,
I love our guests.
that's fun when we have guests that bring in something different. Anyway, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for joining us. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, listen to our podcast, or our huddle, I should say, on all the different podcast networks. And if you want to see our ugly faces or our pretty faces, depends on who you are, you can go watch it on our YouTube channel. We do a lot of other videos that are not just the huddle inside of there as well. So check it out. If you're not a member, come join us at simplybefound.com, where we offer coaching with all of our plans. And we look forward to talking to you. So have a great day, and thanks for watching.
Thank you.